Hello, I'm Bethan Cantrell, and I'll be talking today about privacy governance, threat modeling, and representation in design. I'm joining RSAC from Redmond, Washington, the traditional land of the Duwamish people. While I'm going through the presentation today, please feel free to jump into the comments at any time and ask any questions or provide any observations that you may have. And there will probably also be time for more discussion at the end of the conference as well, but certainly feel free to express yourself as we go along. This presentation is broken into 3 sections covering agency and privacy governance, personal threat modeling and decision-making, and representation and design-side privacy. The goal of the presentation is not to provide end-to-end how-to guidance on ensuring inclusive representational service development. This is intended as a useful thought exercise to help you help the data subjects affected by the systems you work on. Each section has a check-in that provides a summary reframe of its subject, and those are listed here. Privacy governance is important because it supports agency. Privacy by design on its own is insufficient because it doesn't know about many of the risks. Risks are often complex, but intuitive threat modeling can translate into simple, adaptable procedure. And design-side privacy is representative. Representative listening systems may drive more representative design. First, let's talk about agency and privacy. Agency is a person's independent capability or ability to act on their own will. When we describe people or a person as marginalized, we are saying that they have less agency compared to other individuals or groups. As we can see from history and current events around the world, folks who are marginalized frequently stay marginalized or are pushed further down because systems, whether they're a social service, a shopping app, or something else, frequently don't acknowledge the values or risks of marginalized people and don't create environments where people can make decisions to protect their agency or support their values and goals. This session will provide some connectivity between identity, agency, and privacy in a context that can help folks create systems that are agency protecting using the example of personal threat modeling. The attributes that make people unique are relevant in many digital environments, from employment to participation in online communities. Whether the digital environment or online service is for work, government services, a social network, or something else, it needs to be implemented so there is benefit to people without opportunity for individual or systematic harm. To protect agency, we need to protect privacy. Privacy governance programs are in place to ensure that a company's commitments are implemented in a reputable and verifiable manner. Many of us work at organizations that have implemented systems to ensure privacy by design and to operationalize the company's published commitments to certain privacy practices such as these: transparency, choice, data minimization, and data subject rights. Many such programs don't just look at compliance to existing laws or policies, they also look for potential harms that may not be addressed with existing governance controls. Again, though, a relatively small group of people identifying those potential harms on behalf of thousands or millions of users is unlikely to be consistently effective. And while harm-reducing requirements usually do get developed eventually, that's not always the case, and sometimes a lot of people are harmed first. Driving for a more representative design process that is employing creative, respectful methods to reduce harms seems like a very good way to go. Here, we'll review a collection of media excerpts that describe various privacy failures where people were marginalized for reasons related to race, class, diverse gender, and straight-up power asymmetry. Harm may have been prevented if the decision-making or design group was more representative. In the first example, Dr. Chiara Bridges illustrates in the book The Poverty of Privacy Rights that based on the way poor mothers are treated in many social service organizations, they don't have privacy by default. Expectant mothers seeking care are often only provided with care if they give up an extensive amount of information about themselves, their history, and their family circumstances. If they don't provide that information, they risk not receiving the care, and also they risk losing access to their child, as social services could decide that failure to follow through with care indicates an unsafe environment. In the second example, an elementary school and its district administrators repeatedly decide to use an outdoor area called the cage to detain a young student of color in full view of that student's classmates. In the third example, 8 LA County deputy sheriffs used their personal cell phones at a crash site to take photographs of the deceased family. Their behavior was not legally prohibited, and as of this article, this presentation being developed, that policy still had not been passed. In the fourth example, a survey asks a gender identity question, but then provides choices that represent assigned sex answers, effectively erasing some people's gender identity. In the fifth example, police officers arrest, transport, and detain a Black man based solely on facial recognition, which is notoriously bad at identifying people the darker their skin is. The man and his family went through entirely avoidable trauma. In the sixth example, we learn about dark patterns, where design features are used to manipulate data subjects and users into generating more revenue for the service. These articles are all linked from the resource slide at the end of the deck. In this first section, we learned that agency is our ability to take action based on our own will. Privacy is an increasingly important governance area because privacy protects agency. Privacy governance doesn't always know what risks to watch for, undermining agency and creating risk in a variety of ways. And now, let's learn about threat modeling. This slide and the next few slides include diagrams that are representing threat models with different examples. While we walk through them, Roadrunner will be making some decisions. In those same scenarios, you may make different decisions because you have different lived experiences and values. Threat models are not literal design explanations like blueprints for a house. They're symbolic models with indicators for things that need to be protected in the context of things that could cause risk. When we see that modeling, we can better understand what mitigations to make for those risks. Engineers use threat models to make sure they've identified and managed security risks during design. Threat models work for technical privacy as well as other kinds of risk, including online safety, physical safety, or other things as well. This circle, made of an orange dashed line, represents a trust boundary. It indicates our opportunity to make a decision based on our awareness, and we use it pretty intuitively. At the park, the trust boundary may be farther out, and on a crowded sidewalk, it's closer in. We use this intuition for other people during suspenseful movies. If Roadrunner needed to go through this scary-looking door, the audience would be shouting for Roadrunner to pay attention to, for instance, does the door latch work so that the Roadrunner can get back out again, or is there an anvil suspended over the doorway? Because we have some awareness, we have an opportunity to make decisions based on the risks we identify and how those risks weigh against our goals and our priorities. There's this idea that IT is very complex, and we shouldn't expect data subjects or users to understand it. But the reality is that data subjects don't need to understand any more with IT than the average homeowner needs to understand plumbing. Modeling is a tool that can help improve that understanding. We can break down the process for personal threat modeling using just a few steps. This is a very high-level set of steps. We could go deep into the weeds on risk assessment with threat modeling, but this is just an intro. First, enable timely decisions with awareness. Whether you're home feeling safe, at the park and relaxed, or looking at your phone and considering whether to install a new app, or on a crowded sidewalk, you have some awareness of your environment. The trust boundary represents your awareness and starts big and then gets smaller when we see something that needs attention. In this case, that same scary door from the last slide is what needs attention. When something needs your attention, identify the deciding factors for decision-making, like whether we see an anvil. The third step is to decide how the potential risks weigh against your values or goals. This is also an opportunity to determine if there's a way to manage those risks. And finally, take action based on what you decided in steps 2 and 3. We'll also look at a sample plan for how folks can decide to take action in the next few slides. Different people will have different outcomes to the same issues because they have different values and goals, and that's okay. This is an opportunity for people to make their own decisions about how they manage risks. In this example model, Roadrunner wants to plan their day, so they look for a horoscope app. Here's the trust boundary circle again, a dashed orange line. Because Roadrunner cares about privacy, they are being aware and paying attention to the app. When Roadrunner looks at the app, they look at the information the app wants that's listed in the UX and the notice, and they compare that to what the app is used for. In this intentionally silly example, the app wants Roadrunner's DNA in order to provide an extra accurate horoscope. Roadrunner decides to use a different app. This example model is evaluating a messaging service from an end-to-end perspective because Roadrunner wants to use peer-to-peer messaging and the confidence and also wants the confidence that comes from a paid service. Roadrunner expects that there will be more data moving around because there's payments, and also learns about code of conduct requirements when they read the privacy notice. Data subjects can learn about those additional data flows from looking at the notice in the user experience and also reading the privacy statement. Having a more extensive data flow means that Roadrunner needs to trust more of that service to keep their data safe. That means that they need to have some expectation that all of the components of the data flows have been appropriately protected, and that the organization has the maturity and the integrity to have those kinds of systematic protections in place. This more extensive example model is looking at value goals that go along with a complex social network rather than at technical privacy issues. Roadrunner wants to rejoin a popular social network that processes a lot of personal information. Roadrunner evaluates the social network UX and lands on 5 concern areas to plan for: misinformation, location privacy and safety, conformity, bigotry, and group privacy. Again, the trust boundary indicates awareness and the opportunity to look for information before making a decision and acting on it. We'll look at Roadrunner's plan to address these concerns in the next slide. Roadrunner has come up with a set of do's and don'ts for the risks identified in the prior slide, and we can see them organized here. Some of the items on these lists may have account or profile controls to support them. Others rely on Roadrunner to proactively decide how to act on his values, such as in the conformity list, which says, do connect to a diverse set of people and don't create a homogeneous bubble. Or the location privacy and safety list, which says, don't post information about travel away from home or town, at least until you return. Closing out this section, we learned that threat models are a simple design tool for clarifying and managing risk. We can apply threat models to more abstract or complicated scenarios like IT systems or policy. We can threat model for different types of risk in different environments, especially complicated environments like social networks. In the next section, we'll discuss representation, privacy, and design. Privacy by design continues to be a necessary component of trustworthy data governance. However, earlier in this deck, we saw 6 broadly varied examples of privacy failures that could have happened even when relevant privacy controls were in place. That's where design-side privacy comes in. Design-side privacy combines diverse representation, knowledge of technical components, and adherence to privacy principles, with the goal of ensuring data subjects don't experience harm or loss of agency as a result of using a service. This chart shows the relationship between risk introduced by a service and the critical considerations for the design team. Can the data subjects understand the notice? Is it clear how to manage choices? As the service types become higher risk, does the data subject know how to protect their experience? Do they know how to manage their choices within the service environment? For services where the data subject's agency may be directly affected, as with social services or other projects focused on marginalized people, do the potential harms outweigh the value? Have all the harms been fully mitigated, or is there any responsibility on the data subject to manage some risk? Advocacy organizations do great work representing their members in various environments, including IT. Disability rights advocates have a mantra of nothing about us without us that aligns closely with the principles of the Design Justice Network. The Design Justice Network continues to develop and evangelize design principles that work to reduce marginalization and harm across many different types of service and project environments. When a project may have tens of thousands or even millions of users, the design team cannot be diverse enough to represent the needs of all the users or data subjects. There are systems in place to help scale these already, such as accessibility governance programs, privacy governance programs, and others, but developing listening systems so that the service in no way undermines their values or safety can only be a good thing, especially for services that are necessary for use, like public schools, banking, health, or social services. For a person to be required to use a service and for that service to do harm is a harsh reality that many people face today. For this reason, if a high-stakes service is critical to your business, diverse representation is also critical to your business. There's a lot we can learn from data subjects. In this case, the data subject is relying on notice and their own prior experience with the service to develop a plan of action for how to use the social network while also supporting their own values and goals. Roadrunner's do's and don'ts could be used to inform design for privacy and media controls and used to support the narrative of why those changes are beneficial to a larger group rather than just to Roadrunner. Going back to some of the examples we saw of privacy failures, how might data subjects have helped inform more respectful services for expectant mothers, more care in the treatment of kids in schools, or in the use of gender identity in surveys? As I noted earlier in the presentation, this is not a how-to or a case study for setting up a listening system based on a representative number of personal threat models for various service environments. The goal has been to frame a clear message that people benefit from knowing how to use modeling for decision-making, and that it's beneficial for organizations to have this kind of insight from a representative cross-sample of people so they can build a service that doesn't do harm. In this section, we learned that representative design becomes more important when a service of any type becomes more sensitive and/or critical to safety and wellness. Information from the listening system must augment the existing expertise of our own diverse design, development, legal, and governance teams. How a listening system is designed can vary based on the implementing organization and the participants. We just need to make sure it's respectful. How might a data subject-driven listening system look for your projects? Thank you for your time during this discussion.